Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to my overview of Gatekeeper. So for those on across it, I do overviews and reviews pretty much daily on the channel. And when I do an overview, it's just a look at the first 2 hours of a game. Steam thinks that you can make up your mind in those 2 hours, whether you want to keep a game or not. And I kind of agree. Generally speaking, 20 hours in, you're not going to change your mind about what you thought 2 hours in. So it's a quick punchy video. We'll keep it around 10 minutes and I'll give you the broad strokes so you can figure out for yourself if you might want to go down the rabbit hole on this. And it allows me to triage what I will and won't review going forward. So this has been on my peripheral, right? I've been aware of this game for a while and I've played some pre-release of it as well. In fact, I think a lot of that is to its detriment. And in a way, I don't want to say malice on behalf of the developer, but definitely exploiting the nature of early access in the idea. I know this is just going early access, but they have released so many prologue, beta branches, demos. This game has been released multiple times in little bloody almost committee survey packets, and you can feel it in the final product. This on paper is not bad. Everything is green, tick boxes. But it does feel like it's been made by committee. It feels kind of safe. And the early builds I played of it like a bloody year ago or whatever had mechanics and systems and interesting stuff that's not here anymore because they've probably just decided to take it out on the back of feedback. And this is my greatest criticism of early access, which most don't talk about. And it's when a developer leverages that to then compromise their vision to try and play the market, to play the game, as it were. And I don't necessarily get into the idea of games as art very much. I don't really wank and rant about that sort of stuff. But I do feel that if you have a creative vision and a direction of your game, if you want to be a bloody Kojima auteur, that's awesome. Release your game, back yourself, go all in, and if it's shit and it's too much and you miss the mark, well, so be it. This is the life of a creative, as I understand it, as someone who's more of an engineer. However, you see this at the indie level kind of more and more these days. It's still kind of a niche play, but they've done it here to the extreme, where what we have here as a final product is almost the indie equivalent of blue chip safety AAA releases. Well, they do it a little bit differently. Think when the AAA industry started to really crack, when they would release the next umpteenth Ubisoft game where you had to climb up towers and collect crap on the map, and it was just exactly the same, right? And people caught onto it, and that was the beginning of the fall, as it was, of the AAA industry, where games were being released with tick box safety mechanics and they felt dull and bland, and no one could deny that the newest Assassin's Creed each year looked beautiful and wonderful, and the cityscapes and all that were really great, and yet less and less people would play them and get more and more bored with them. I'm seeing this when games do what this game has done. So yeah, look, it's Risk of Rain adjacent. It's an action roguelike. It's top down, so I guess it's different. The controls are tight. The soundtrack's got a lot of sort of low wave, like pretty mellow, almost puts you to sleep, but it's a good soundtrack, I guess, but it's not Risk of Rain. Risk of Rain, it has the most memorable bloody soundtrack on the planet. I'm probably playing it in the background in this video as we speak. So, like I said, it's one of those things. It's not bad. Nothing about this game is bad. But it's all just very safe and generic, and it kind of hurts my soul. Like, so far I've got the starting 2 dudes. You can unlock more kits and buy things, so all the upgrade systems are fairly generic. You just go from level to level, and it'll be a random objective. Kill all the dudes, stand in the proximity of a pylon until it charges, pick up bloody keys and put them in holes, right? And it's just random what that is, and then a boss spawns now and then. We've seen all this before. Again, if you had a checklist, it's checking the lists. And it's kind of the most corporate feeling indie game I've played. And it leaves a little bad taste in my mouth. I'm not necessarily trying to bash it because it's probably going to review well. And there are going to be people that really, really like it. Like, again, from a lot of objective metrics, this is a good game. One might even be able to say great. But I think back to like, and while I don't want to necessarily judge it for what it's not, I do think back to earlier builds where it was actually doing its namesake, where you would have a giant walled gate at the end of the level, and enemies, it was almost like tower defense. Enemies were trying to run through the gate, and you're trying to hold them off as long as you can. Eventually, you would get overwhelmed, and the enemies that pour through tick forward into the next level. So it had this sort of almost campaign. It was very original. It was cool. And it's probably why they called it bloody Gatekeeper in the first place. And if you perform poorly in those levels, when you get to the big finale, you get fingered. You get absolutely bashed by all the dudes that you let slip past through the gate. It was really cool, but they took it out. And now they just have bloody normal generic mode, and there's an arena mode where you sort of just stand in the center and take on waves of dudes, and that kind of cuts out what fluff there is, I suppose, and cleans it up a bit. But it doesn't have the power creep of Risk of Rain. There's items, but you know, a lot of them are like 1% upgrade here or there. You level up and, you know, pick your plus 5% attack speed, and nothing wows your pants off or blows your socks off or whatever. It's just safe. And it was something else. And again, this is all speculation. I understand that, and not everyone's going to agree with me, but I've seen this happen to great indie games before. A very high profile one I bring up all the time because, again, when you're talking about indie games, most people don't know them. But there was an extraction shooter called The Cycle, and it was sort of aping parts of the Tarkov craze, but doing its own thing. Really interesting space, going down onto a planet, extracting things, doing missions. It was quite wonderful. And they just kept changing it, and they turned it into just sci-fi Tarkov, and it was fucking boring by the end of it. And what do you know? It doesn't exist anymore. They had to shut down the servers, which totally makes sense for the way they behaved. I'm not trying to just bash Jaeger or whatever it was, but, you know, they just kept moving the goalposts because they were clearly dictating their entire design philosophy on spreadsheets in the background or bookmaking or whatever, and then eventually it couldn't sustain itself. They shut it down. Kind of the exact opposite of your sort of No Man's Sky, going all in, going radio silent and rising something from the dead at your own cost. Not every dev has to do that, of course, but just an example of what this feels like here. And it is in early access, and look, I'll eat my words. I'm not always 100% right. This, you know, maybe some people think this is Game of the Year. That's fine. Let's see if they update it radically over the course of early access to just morph it into something more generic and mushy and people-pleasing to whichever forum post gets the most updates saying that this part of the game they don't like or that, and they'll just turn it into another generic, well, even more generic, because it is kind of generic as it is, action roguelike. Anyway, that might seem harsh. I suppose it is. In my heart of hearts, as a gamer who loves games, and especially recently, I've had some games really wow me. Check out some of the more recent videos that have just really surprised me and made me happy to be a gamer. This sort of thing is the antithesis. Again, it feels community vote, committee driven. And I would much rather if they just shot their shot with their niche, unusual take and let it underperform. But at least it would be interesting. But at the same time, who knows? What would I know about making a game? Maybe this pops off and they make $1 bazillion and good for them. So anyway, that's my take on Gatekeeper. It's fine, it's good, it may well be great, but it also put me to sleep. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being. I'll catch you guys on the next one.